telling Rabbi Rahimi a bit about our experience at the moment, but we'll go on to the next part of the video a bit later. Just to tell you that Friday a week ago, it was the day before Mishpatim. The government announced at 1 o'clock or just after 1 o'clock that from midnight, everyone is to stay baseger, to stay in your homes. You're not allowed to have any visitors, and we're doing that for 5 days because there were a few people with the UK virus and that had got out into the community. And to make sure it doesn't spread, we're to stay home for 5 days. You don't go to work. There are only 4 reasons to leave your home. And so my Bet Knesset, as it happens, we had 2 bar mitzvahs that were booked, one for Shabbat morning and one for Mincha. The one for Shabbat morning, they rang and said, can we do a bar mitzvah Mincha time, Erev Shabbat? And we agreed. So just a few hours later, they'd invited all of their 150 guests. The bar mitzvah boy read the Kriyat Torah without a bracha. It's an interesting shaila because the Mincha Asher spoke about it in one of his things, but Tshuvot last week. But anyway, we did without Birkat Torah. The bar mitzvah boy read Maftir and Haftarah that he would have read for Parashat HaChodesh. And then there was the Kiddush that they would have had at Shabbat morning. They went and did a Suda Friday night in our hall. The second bar mitzvah has been postponed. I met with the parents today and we're looking at doing a Shabbat afternoon bar mitzvah in a few weeks' time. We also had 2 weddings booked for Sunday, one of which took place just a few hours later, 4 o'clock. So remember, the announcement came at 5 minutes past 1. By 4 o'clock, we've got the wedding ready to go. The other wedding has been postponed. Otherwise, we have big halls and so on, and they had bookings, Sheva Brachot and so on for other communities. All of that was postponed or cancelled. So it creates a problem, but we came out of Seger Wednesday night.
So it means that everywhere, not only in Jerusalem, we have that pandemic everywhere. It doesn't make any sense. The climate and the weather and it's hot or it's cold. It's something maybe it's based on the laboratories in Wuhan in China. That's why Trump says that's a Chinese virus. But altogether in these let's say pandemic crisis, the community with your leadership right now move forward, even that you are far away from the community, you're in contact with them by phone, by regularly. You cannot say face to face as it was before, but you're working, I think, more harder than before. Is that right?
That is correct. That is correct. So we've been offering, when we were in Seger, when we were in lockdown, we were offering Shacharit every morning on Zoom. There was no Dvarim Sheba Kedusha, but it meant you could feel like you were part of a Kehillah every morning, 6:45 or 7 o'clock. You come on Zoom, we're davening together. One of us would, often myself or another rabbi, would lead the Shacharit. Everyone knows there's no Dvarim Sheba Kedusha and so on, but at least you felt like you're part of a minyan, and it's consistent with the Gemara Brachot that says if you couldn't be part of a minyan, at least you should daven at the same time as the other people in the Kehillah, and that's what we were doing.
And the Rabbi Figdor, how about the place in Australia that you're living right now, the behavioral community? How about the elders? How about the sisterhood as well, students and teenagers?
So let me tell you a bit about connecting with people. It's been more important than ever before to connect with people. So before Rosh Hashanah, when we were, by the way, again in a lockdown, and there were no minyanim in town, we made a point of ringing. I set up a roster. I got volunteers to make sure that every one of our 650 families in our Bet Knesset at least got a phone call from someone saying, how are you doing? Wishing you Rosh Hashanah. We're going to send you a pack of reading material, and I hope you have a nice Yom Tov and so on. The elders have been particularly badly affected, partly because they were the group that were most vulnerable initially, and also because they feel vulnerable. They don't want to take any risks. So they weren't going out even to do shopping, even though you were allowed to go out and do shopping. In my own case, I was doing the shopping for my mother. She doesn't feel like she felt safe enough to go shopping. Unlike almost any part of the other part of the globe, I should tell you that in Melbourne, Australia, in fact, in the whole of Australia, there are 0 community cases. Now, you're going to say, well, hang on, 0 community cases? Israel had 3,500 yesterday, just alone. We've got 0. So why did we go into lockdown? We went into lockdown for 5 days, a severe lockdown last week, only because there were 2 cases that got out of hotel quarantine. The government is concerned if you let it go for 3 days, 2 cases quickly becomes 15. By the end of the week, you've got 59 cases, that sort of thing. So unless they do a seger, a lockdown immediately, they're concerned it'll get out of control. The worst we had, by the way, I think was in July, I think it was. We ended up getting just over 700 cases a day. Now, for most of the world, they don't even know what they think. Oh, halavai, we only had 700. For us, that was the worst in Australia. We never got more than that in a day. And we went into lockdown to try to bring down the cases. And sure enough, it's been very effective because, of course, it didn't spread.
And how about the Jewish community right now? It's not like Spain. It's not like Italy. It's not over here in Israel. We have more than 4,500 that were, they say Corona. Really, we don't know before the vaccination and after the vaccination what's going on. But writing down it's because of the Corona disease. But how many till now from your community and other communities that you've been in contact with in Australia, got hurt or
Okay, so let's speak about, in the Jewish community, I'm aware of 2 people in Melbourne, Australia from the Jewish community. I'm just looking up the figures now, who died from Corona.
What's their name? Would you can mention their names? Actually, Louis Nishmat. What's their name?
I'd have to look up their Hebrew name. They're not from our shul. They're from another Bet Knesset, so I don't know their Hebrew name. I can tell you, though, that there were quite a few people from the Jewish community who were sick. And I interviewed in this very same forum on a Thursday lunch club, I interviewed a couple who were very sick. He was on a ventilator over Pesach for many weeks and eventually on an ECMO machine because they realized he wouldn't survive on a ventilator. And that recording is available on YouTube when I interviewed that couple, a frum couple, about their experience. So I wouldn't say we were untouched, but Baruch Hashem, the Australian community and the Australian Jewish community have by and large escaped a very big magefa and can't compare to Jewish communities in the UK, in Crown Heights or anywhere in the US, in Israel. Unfortunately, the Orthodox community in those communities have been harder hit than the general community. In our case, there haven't been many cases anyway, but certainly the Jewish community, Baruch Hashem, has not been greatly affected other than lockdown. And that, by the way, has some serious consequences. You have people with problems because they're in isolation, and it's bayot nafshiot we refer to. And that, by the way, so it comes with other risks. Now, I don't want to judge whether a mental problem is worse than a physical problem or vice versa, but I can tell you now that physically most people went unscathed. A lot of people have suffered. I have to say a credit to our government, our federal government, not the state government. that they set up a financial program that by and large helped the Australian community get through the lockdowns. We had, unlike in Israel, the government wanted to make sure that people stayed employed. Except that I don't need, by the way, my community has a chazan and a makela, has also a choir. The choir's not performing for 6 months because Bet Knesset is closed. However, the government wants me to continue to keep them on the payroll. So the government says, we will pay you the money. It's called JobKeeper. We'll pay you the money. You pay them as if they were still on the payroll. Wow. And we'll see it through.
Wow.
So our government in Australia, by the way, it's run by our treasurer. The Australian treasurer is a Jewish treasurer. He happens to be a former student of mine. I taught him in high school. But he made sure that people so instead of Avtala in Israel being around 25%.
25%.
Our Avtala has almost hit 7%.
7.
Just 7. That's right.
I cannot believe.
Now,
wow.
Why? Because the government did something to make sure people stay on the payroll. They said, we will give you money to continue paying people during the lockdown. Now that money started tapering off, but what it meant is, by the way, they gave more money than I would pay. Now I had to pay the whole lot. Couldn't keep any of it for my Bet Knesset. But for example, a chorister, someone singing in the makela, might get every week, I don't know, $50, $60, I don't know. But the government initially gave me $1,200 a fortnight, which I paid them, which is more than $1,000 more than they'd ever get. But why did that work out well? Now the government's wasting money, you'd say, except the people in the choir spent money. They suddenly get over $1,000 more every fortnight than they ever got before. They're spending money, and that keeps the economy going, and it goes back to the government because you're paying ma'am as well.
Wow.
So it's not so now. Of course, it costs billions of dollars.
So
in comparison,
in comparison to Israel or the United States, that's even more than a year. I do remember Purim last year and this year right now that were at Seger, and some didn't want that there's gonna be any halevayot and so on in Bnei Brak, but we could see that's Reb Feinstein and all the Gdolei Torah, you cannot say at home. That's ridiculous that if you say for demonstration, it's allowed to gonna get out. But for the small businesses and for getting to shul, you have to have kapsulot, you have to be aware, and so on. Even in United States, we have millions that got to Washington, D.C. For the demonstration. But I think that you don't have any.
We didn't allow that here.
They don't let you over there. But the point is that your leadership as a rabbi, as a Jewish scholar right now, moving forward with your community is really appreciated. And maybe we as a rabbis do understand one each other better than others. They expect from us more than we can give, but 24/7 we are in service of these communities as a family therapist, as mentors, as one that's every time coming. And those rabbis that were heard in the Haredi over here and the ultra Orthodox communities were it was maybe 45% that's right now at the hospitals and were hurt because that they are in contact with the people. It's not the same that you get politicians, they can get to the cars, they get to the parliament and so on. They can keep themselves away and keep the social distance. But we as the rabbis, face to face, we have to be in contact with the people. That's why it was mostly helped them in comparison with the others. But anyway, in summarizing what's said, they have a brief speaking and supporting one each other in these communities are so away from Jerusalem to Australia. It's far away, far away.
It is.
Yes.
And let's kick off our interview now, if we can. So we'll
Yes.
continue recording if you like.